Thank you, Margaret, for organizing this. My name is Rade Trimceski. I was one of the crew on sailing vessel Lodos during the possession point race, where we had a successful crew overboard rescue of two sailors from the water during the race. I um, I thought I'd take just a few minutes and sort of walk through what happened from our perspective as the vessel that managed to rescue or pick up out of the water both crew and then transfer them successfully to a sheriff's boat. We're going to also try to get Tolga. He's the other co-owner of the Lodos. I'm one of the owners, and Tolga, who was steering. And at the time when we were going through the rescue maneuver, and he'll give his perspective as well. And apologies that we couldn't organize it in a time that both of us could be at the same time on the call. What I thought I'd do is I'd share my screen. Let me see if I'm already sharing my screen. I don't think I am. And just kind of orient everybody for sort of what the race was, what that day felt like, just big picture. Seattle is here. And sorry, Seattle's here. The race started Social Marina, somewhere down here. The boats were heading downwind. The wind was coming from the south. This is north. This right here is north. And we're basically going downwind. We were in the second sequence. The faster boats were ahead of us. By the time the boats that were in the first fleet, including Blue, which is the boat that lost two of the crew overboard, by the time they were somewhere here, we were I want to say somewhere around here, and I think we were like maybe 6 nautical miles behind them when we were coming down. The wind was steadily building. Started in the 15s, it was up in the 20s by the time we were sort of coming down. Um, our boat was moving so fast that we were planing. We were going between 11, 12 knots, and then we would get up to 15, 16 knots when we would plane. Lodos is a J111, so it's a 36-foot boat. It does take a little bit of power and speed to get it planing, so it was quite a bit of wind that day, and the sea state was a little bit confused because of the wind was going against the current, so there was reasonably big waves, for reasonably big for the Puget Sound. A couple of interesting things from my vantage point is the first sign that, like the first time we ever had a conversation about anything other than being focused on just sailing the boat really fast. And I should stop and say, at the time during the downwind leg, I was actually just watching. I was all the way in the back of the boat without any assigned role. I was just doing tactics, and we were going head to head with another J111 boat that was very close to us. So we were just basically engaged in super focused tactics on sailing the boat really fast and making sure that we pay attention to our competitors and see what they're doing so we can adjust accordingly. So that was like pretty all consuming because we were going super fast downwind. The wind speed was, I think, like 24, 25 knots when JJ, who was our trimmer of the kite, um, said something to the effect that the boats ahead are dropping their sails, which in some way was expected because we knew that the boats would be rounding the mark and they would be taking down their kites in order to do that. And then start heading upwind, which was basically this direction. But she clarified after a minute or two that she's seeing more than one boat that doesn't even have a jib up. And we had a brief discussion about why that could be. But again, we were trying to handle the boat that we were going super fast, and we were careful not to broach in those kinds of in those kinds of conditions. So we didn't make much of it other than that. Now, the interesting thing to note is that by the time this stuff was happening on our boat, the two crew members had fallen overboard. There was a mayday call. There was a bunch of discussions on the radio. We didn't hear any of that. Primarily, not because we didn't have a radio on the boat or it wasn't on or in the right channel. All of that stuff was correct. It was that the wake of the water was so loud that we didn't hear anything. and this was going on for at least 30-ish minutes, uh, 40 minutes, I think. So that's one of the key takeaways from us. And I think that was mentioned by some of the other folks that you interviewed, is that our biggest learning lesson, first obvious learning lesson, was we got to have a radio that's much louder and that's so close in the cockpit that even with the super loud noise of going fast while planing downwind, you can hear something on the radio. Okay, so that's sort of lesson number one. The second thing that it's interesting is just that initial commentary from JJ was actually pretty instructive, because even though we couldn't understand why the boats were dropping their jibs and had their kites down, we did actually speculate. I remember having the conversation amongst ourselves. Maybe the wind is building up so much that people just don't feel safe even having the jibs up, which in hindsight is a little bit silly, but like those were the conversations in the moments that were being had. Anyway, as we were approaching sort of this point somewhere here, just do the circle. We had a decision. We had to make a decision because the wind was building up. I think it was like we were seeing 28 knots. I think Tolga has the log. Maybe when he's doing this interview, he'll give the exact numbers. But anyway, the wind was definitely building up, and we didn't really want to jibe and risk a broach. The other Giant 111 boat was right behind us, and it would have been a uncomfortable or dangerous situation for us to do that. So anyway, we got set up to drop the kite. And as we started doing that, literally completely unexpectedly and out of nowhere, JJ, that was near the pit and working some of the lines, getting ready to get the kite down, saw the yellow pylon that was sticking out, and she first said, "Oh, like, what is that buoy doing there?" And we all kind of looked at it, and we all for a moment thought it's like some sort of a buoy, or we thought it was a marker for the race, but that didn't make sense to us. And I think it was JJ that said, I think that actually means that there's crew in the water because it looks like a mom device. So anyway, the moment that she said that, we said we should drop all the sails and turn on the motor and pick them up. There was so much work that was happening on our boat prior to what I just said, relative to just, again, like not broaching, getting the kite down, that I personally, I don't know about Tolga, but I personally wasn't really paying attention to anything that was happening around us in terms of the other boats and the fact that they were trying to rescue the crew out of the water or any of that. So like, it's like, it might sound a little bit unbelievable, but it's like, I actually just like saw a yellow pylon. We talked about dropping the kite and dropping the main. And then I was, think if you play the video, you'll see I was, me and Max were the two crew that were getting the main down, which ended up being a lot more work than I anticipated. But anyway, it was like in the moment, I think we spent no more than maybe 5 seconds to just decide to drop the sails and go to the yellow pylon and grab whoever's in the water. I personally didn't see the people next to the pylon at the time. I just assumed that there's someone there. And I don't recall if JJ that was on the other side of the boat actually said I see the people in the water or anything like it. I think relative to, maybe this is a good place for me to just pause and just say a couple of things that I had shared with some folks, and I think I shared with you. This is my second J111. I was a co-owner in another J111, and sort of for me personally that day, like in the moment that we decided to get the sails down, it was pretty obvious what is the only way that we're going to get the people out, which is to basically back up to them and pick them up from the back of the boat, because the J111 has an open transom. And but I say that with so much confidence, and not because of anything else other than experience. on the previous J111, we were had the mandatory practice for crew overboard for the Van Isle 360 race that we're participating in, and we decided to actually go out in pretty heavy winds out of Social Marina to practice. It was blowing the day when we were practicing with Flash, which was the other J111 that I co-owned. It was blowing 25, 26 knots, and we just threw a fender in the water and tried to get it out. And we spent more than an hour and 20 minutes practicing. We timed ourselves to see if we could pick up the crew in 3 minutes. We were never successful. It took tens of minutes to actually uh, retrieve the fender. And for those people who have tried to actually, crew overboard exercises with a fender, picking up a fender is vastly different than picking up a human.
Right.
And but nonetheless, I mean, we even with all of that understanding, like we basically that day after spending an hour and a half debriefed and convinced ourselves that if we were to ever be in a situation where someone was in the water and we needed to pick them up, then the fastest and safest thing to do is actually drop the sails, double check that you don't have lines in the water, turn on the motor, back up to pick up the person from the back of the boat. So anyway,
I think I noticed in the video, the person at the helm, you could see them using the throttle with some authority in reverse, but then looked like they put it in neutral, if not turning off, at least put it in neutral as you got close to the people in the water, right?
That's right. Yes. So I mean, Tolga was steering the boat, and Tolga was operating the throttle. So when you talk, when Tolga does the debrief, it would be super valuable for Tolga to tell the story from his perspective. From my perspective, because I was standing close to the mast, we had just dropped the main, and we were just focused on letting Tolga stay focused and trying to help him. The first time when we missed. Or we didn't miss him. The first time when we attempted to rescue them, our boat was moving so fast, even though the motor was on, and I don't think Tolga had the motor in reverse, but the propeller in reverse. But it was pretty clear that like our boat, even without any sails, was still moving way too fast for the folks to hold on to the life sling or the line. I remember distinctly telling Tolga, we're going to have to put it in reverse and go, like, with throttle. And that, surprisingly, Tolga's primary concern was that, there's a line in the water from the life sling, and the obvious thing would be that we could foul the prop, and then it would be less of an opportunity for us to get the folks out of the water. So there was a little bit of that discussion on the boat, but the second time around, yes, your observation is correct. That Tolga did actually put quite a bit of throttle in reverse, enough for us to slow the boat and actually sort of start moving towards the sailors in the water. And that actually, I think, made all the difference in terms of us being able to pick them up. But anyway, the takeaway is practice makes perfect, and like there's no way I would have known that if I didn't do hours and hours of practice on other boats, including J111.
And the fact that you went out in higher winds to do it, because you could have practiced over and over in 15 knots of wind and convinced yourself you could have done it a different way, and then the wheels would have come off in the higher winds. So
yeah, that there's something to be said about that. Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that I'll say is I think most of us on the boat, I mean, we were participating in the race. We were really just building up experience as a team. We were going to participate in the Transpac, which was coming up at the end of June, and this race happened, I think, in April or March. I don't remember the details, maybe February. But nonetheless, all of us had, or many of us had taken the survival at sea,
safety course, at sea,
safety at sea, which was mandatory. And I think that in itself is like incredible amount of learning, and gives one quite a bit of appreciation for many things that you can expect including how heavy a person is and the fact that like you should not expect a person to be able to do a pull up with their full gear that is wet. So we knew that as we were approaching them, that like we're gonna have to basically pick them up and take them out of the water.
Mhm.
And But anyway, like in summary, practice and then actually taking the courses, I think played the most important role that day from our vantage point and the things that we did. Obviously, if the pilot, I mean, if the mom pack wasn't deployed, we would have never seen the crew in the water. And so that, well, it's not something that we did. Played obviously, I mean, something that the owner of the blue boat or boat blue did. It definitely played the major role in us being able to do what we did, which is stop and pick them up.
Right, right. Yes. It's we're so fortunate to have these pictures and videos taken from the ferry, because you can really see that you see the pylon for a while, but you almost have to be on top of the pylon before you see that there's two people hanging onto it. And everyone has agreed there's no way they would have seen the people in the water without the pylon. So,
Yeah. That's really the if I were to like to summarize, those were probably the most important learning lessons from my vantage point and sort of like what went well. Obviously, we had to do this again. Being more deliberate and thoughtful about putting in reverse. I should say the other thing, like safety at sea teaches you is that, I mean, like hypothermia settles in. Like the waters of Puget Sound are pretty cold. So if someone had told me, on the dock that someone was in the water for 45 minutes, I would have certainly been a lot more thoughtful about, well, first, like it's incredible and it's a miracle that they're still like have dexterity and they can move and they can communicate. But we would have been probably even more sensitive to the fact that they really don't have any muscle strength or dexterity to them. This is all to say, we didn't know at the time how long they were in the water. We thought, I mean, I personally thought that they had just like fallen overboard like just a minute or two before,
mhm.
which was clearly not the case. And that was pretty evident because when John Mason and I picked up the first crew member,
Sheridan.
Sheridan, I mean, she was basically like she's like a jellyfish. Like she had no dexterity. I remember not just picking her up out of the water with John, but then like we actually sort of like moved her on deck and leaned her in a way that her head is above her body and just leaning on one of the sides of the boat on the inside. But it was like that. I think at that moment I was starting to like ask myself in my head, like, how long did this person actually stay in the water?
Mm. Yeah. Did you have to open the lifelines across the transom to get them in?
Yes. We opened all three of our lifelines, and it's not something that we do, but it's like our lifelines are, they aren't done in a way that like we can take them off fairly easily. So we didn't have to like use a knife and cut any like sort of tape or anything like that to get them off. So yeah, but yes, we did take all three of the lifelines in the back in order for us to get them out of the water.
And with the putting the boat in reverse, I guess would have taken some of the pressure off of the life sling on the stern of the boat. Was the life sling pulling on the quarter of the boat making it difficult to steer until you did that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is yes, but as I mentioned, Tolga was steering the boat. John and I were getting ready to get them out of the water. So I think, talking to Tolga, that wasn't. I'm sure it was, but Tolga didn't put a whole lot of point, a sort of finer point on that being the most difficult thing. I think, but we should have the person that drove the boat. Tolga will give his perspective on that. From my vantage point, I do remember that like there was concern about the line.
Yes.
getting fouled in the prop. But then when I watched the video, it's pretty clear that like I mean that you
Well,
know
there's a
in hindsight, like if this happens again, I will be even less concerned about that.
Right. Yeah. The combination of it being a floating line, but also there being enough pressure on it that you had
That's
to
right.
keep it away from the boat. But always a good thing to consider.
That's right. That's right.
Mhm.
Um,
And when the sheriff boat approached, what was the experience of the sheriff boat coming in and making the decision of, do we try to transfer the jellyfish? How was it making that decision?
yeah. So thank you for asking that because I don't think that's on. I don't think everybody like put their phones down and when on when with their life. But the story for us continued. I think so. What happened after we got them out of the water is JJ but JJ, which I mentioned earlier. She's a registered nurse. She actually worked in ER setting for some amount of time. So we got Sheridan down below with JJ. JJ took some of her clothes off and gave some of her clothes. I think probably about 7-ish minutes elapsed with all of this stuff that I just described happening. And the sheriff's boat hailed us on the radio and said, basically, like, hey guys, if everything's okay, we're going to take off. Just one last check. Like, do you guys think that, like they're okay, or do you guys want to transfer them because we're a much faster boat? So I think without really that much thinking, told them, could you guys just like hang around for a little bit, and we'll decide and get back to you. So we told them to stick around. We took another few minutes, and really JJ, I think, was the primary person that made the decision. She said, I think these people would be much better off if they, got to the hospital in a few minutes as opposed to like an hour. We did a little bit of math for how long it's going to take us with our boat speed with motoring to get to the closest hospital. And so it was pretty quick decision. So I think like we told the sheriff's boat we should transfer them to you guys. And then they kind of kicked into gear because I'm pretty sure they practiced this. They said we're gonna come. Our think they were starboard or port. We're gonna come parallel to you guys. We're gonna tie uh, to your boat. The interesting thing is that we didn't stop. So they basically told us to head into the wind. We were moving at, I don't remember what speed. It wasn't sort of cruising speed, but we were certainly not stalled. So we were moving. They came close to us. There was quite a bit of banging. They have an aluminum boat. But anyway, we tied, I think close to the shrouds, if not on the shrouds, on one attach point, and then our stern and their stern were close enough that I tied the other line. Actually, I didn't tie the line. If I recall correctly, the sheriff, I think, told me to hold the line safely, but not tie it.
Mhm.
Um, but the I remember Sheridan coming out from below. She had sort of like gotten some of her mobility back, but she wasn't really like walking and having normal dexterity. But when she saw the whole setup of like big waves banging, two boats banging each other, she was like, I am not going in that boat.
Mhm.
So we all tried to like just calm her and say, don't worry, this is going to be okay. But, it's pretty clear that she was very concerned. Um, and it was concerning because I mean, if her feet got between the two boats at the wrong time, that would have been like a completely other uh, set of really bad things that would happen. Anyway, the one of the sheriffs basically gave us instructions. He said, "You guys are going to throw her on me," and she heard that and she said, "No throwing me." But it's pretty clear that the police officers had practiced this because I mean, it's not like she was going to fly for 7 feet or anything, but
Mhm.
we got her safely over the lifelines with her feet on our boat, and then at the right time. There was no lifeline, so like the part of the sheriff's boat where she was going to go over was pretty open, so there was nothing for her to trip or anything like it. So, and there was 3 people that were, keeping her stable on the boat, and we were just waiting for the right wave and the right way for the boats to be together. And when the sheriff said, "When I tell you guys to throw her, you guys are going to throw her."
Okay.
So we were really just like following his instructions. And he said, "Throw her," and we threw her, and she fell right on him, and then he fell backwards and held her. So she basically safely landed on him. He fell backwards, and it looked like a fairly highly coordinated thing. Which is, as I was watching this transpire, I'm like, "This is not the first time this man has done this."
Right,
It was
right.
pretty cool. Um, I think Brian didn't need that much. I think he had enough dexterity and mobility to him that it was easier for him to step on the boat.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, that's how we transfer them, and we have some things on our boat as a sort of memorabilia from
Sure.
that experience.
Right, right. Well, thank you for taking those dings. Yeah.
Yes, the least we could do. It was a super happy day.
Yes. Yes. For everyone, and I'm so impressed by the skill of everyone involved, and how many people and how many boats were involved in that rescue, and still how much of it was, boy, there was some luck involved of who was where at what time. Was, you know, I'm so glad that happened. I'm so glad the ferry was able to come in. I'm so glad that, we joke about one of the lessons learned in these things so often is, if you're going to fall overboard, be on a boat near the front and fall overboard on the ley line,
That's right. I mean, that's right. That is, yes. And if you're gonna fall overboard, like make sure you're in a sailboat race, because there are going to be other boats to pick you up.
Yes,
That's
yes.
the yeah. I mean, yeah. I think in many ways, right. This speaks to the community. Like, I don't think I woke up the day when I was practicing in 25 knots. Steve Kirsch, who is the other owner of the other
Mhm.
J111, is a commercial airline pilot. I think he was the one who said, "It's going to be really bad weather today. We should go out and practice."
Yeah.
This is to say, right? Like, I think in many ways this was a success story because it takes a community to takes things seriously and practice. And just like you said, right? We practiced in conditions that were similar enough that when this happened, it was pretty clear to everyone on board what should happen. And I forgot to mention, which is I told you sort of my experience, but um, when this happened, there was no discussions about oh, what is the right thing? Should we do a figure eight? And there's none of that.
Hmm.
We all just looked at each other and said we should drop the sails, we should turn on the engine, we should go back. Which is to say that Tolga and the rest of the crew had obviously practiced on Lodos before sort of I showed up to the party, like a year and a half before. But that was a pretty clear, well-established pattern on that J111 as well.
And
From
they knew to throw the life sling, not try to throw it to the victim, but they knew to put the life sling overboard and tow it to the victim. And yeah, so many of those pieces. So
That's right. That's right.
excellent. So we have Safety at Sea coming up in a couple of months, and we're going to be doing uh, the life sling crew overboard practice the day before the rest of the Safety at Sea hands-on training. What would be the key thing that you would say people should practice for crew overboard and life sling use?
Uh, I mean, the most important thing is to actually just do it. And the second most important thing is to actually do it not in like super calm water where everything works out great.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then do it as many times as you should, and do it frequently.